Girlfriend brought birthday presents to meet my family at dinner. I caught them all talking behind her back, calling her fat and irritating. My mom told them I could do better than her. She overheard everything and left crying. Now my sister won't apologize to everyone. My name is Jake. I'm 31 years old. And today I'm going to tell you about the most humiliating and heartbreaking experience of my life. The night my family revealed their true colors and destroyed my relationship with the woman I loved. This is a story about cruelty disguised as concern, about people who think they're better than others based on superficial judgments, and about the moment I had to choose between my family and my integrity. I never imagined that a simple birthday dinner would end with my girlfriend sobbing in her car and me realizing that my family wasn't the loving, accepting group I thought they were. Let me give you some context about my relationship with my girlfriend, Amy. We met 2 years ago at a charity fundraiser where we were both volunteering. Amy works as an elementary school teacher, and she has this incredible warmth and kindness that drew me to her immediately. She's funny, intelligent, compassionate, and we connected on a level I had never experienced with anyone else. We started dating shortly after that event, and over the next 2 years, our relationship grew stronger. I knew within the first 6 months that I wanted to marry her someday. She was everything I had been looking for, my best friend and my partner, someone who made me want to be a better person. Now, I need to address something that becomes relevant to this story. Amy is a plus-size woman. She's beautiful, confident in her body, and has never let societal beauty standards dictate her self-worth. I fell in love with her for who she is as a person, her character, her heart, her mind. Her body size was never a factor in my attraction to her, positive or negative. It was simply part of who she was, and I loved all of her. Amy is healthy, active, lives her life fully, and doesn't apologize for her appearance. I admired that confidence, that refusal to shrink herself, literally or figuratively, to make others comfortable. My family, however, is a different story. My mother, Patricia, is one of those women who has always been obsessed with appearance and status. She's been thin her entire life, works out religiously, watches every calorie, and has strong opinions about how people should look and present themselves. My sister, Lauren, who is 28, has inherited a lot of these attitudes. She's always been the conventionally attractive one in the family, popular in school, married to a successful lawyer, living what my mother considers the perfect life. My father is more laid back but tends to go along with whatever my mother says to keep the peace. My younger brother, Tyler, who's 25, usually just stays out of family drama altogether. I had been hesitant to introduce Amy to my family, and looking back now, I think some part of me knew there might be issues. I had mentioned her to them in passing over the 2 years we dated, but I had made excuses about why they hadn't met yet, scheduling conflicts, distance, being too busy. The truth was, I was worried about how my mother and sister would react to Amy, particularly regarding her size. I had heard them make comments about other people's weight before, judgmental observations about strangers or distant relatives, and it always made me uncomfortable. But I told myself that they would be different with someone I was dating, that they would see Amy's wonderful qualities and her appearance wouldn't matter. The meeting finally happened because of my mother's birthday. She was turning 60 and wanted a family dinner to celebrate, nothing huge, just immediate family at her favorite upscale restaurant. She specifically requested that I bring Amy, saying it was past time she met the woman I had been dating for so long. I was actually excited, hoping this would be the moment my family would see what I saw in Amy and welcome her into the fold. Amy was excited too, maybe a little nervous about making a good impression, but mostly just happy to finally meet the family I had talked about. Amy, being the thoughtful, generous person she is, decided to bring birthday gifts for my mother. She spent time shopping and putting together a beautiful gift basket with expensive skincare products, gourmet chocolates, a lovely scarf, and a heartfelt card. She also brought small gifts for Lauren and my father, just tokens to make a good first impression, a nice bottle of wine for Dad and a beautiful journal for Lauren, who had mentioned wanting to start writing more. Amy spent probably $200 on these gifts, not because she was trying to buy their approval, but because that's who she is. Someone who puts thought and care into making others feel special. We arrived at the restaurant right on time. Amy looked beautiful in a navy blue dress that she had bought specifically for the occasion, her hair and makeup done perfectly. She was carrying the gift bags, smiling nervously but warmly. I could see she wanted this to go well, wanted my family to like her, and I felt a surge of love for her and confidence that everything would be fine. We walked into the private dining room my mother had reserved, and I made the introductions. Amy was gracious and warm, immediately telling my mother happy birthday and presenting her with the gift basket. My mother accepted it with a tight smile, thanked Amy briefly, and then set it aside without really looking at it. That should have been my first warning sign. Dinner started off okay, superficially at least. We ordered food and drinks, and there was polite conversation. Amy tried to engage everyone, asking questions about their lives, sharing stories about her work as a teacher, laughing at jokes. But I noticed that my mother and Lauren were being somewhat cold, giving short answers, not really reciprocating the warmth Amy was offering. My father was friendlier, asking Amy about her teaching and seeming genuinely interested. Tyler was on his phone half the time, barely participating. I tried to keep the conversation flowing, to create connection, but it felt forced and uncomfortable in a way I couldn't quite name. About halfway through dinner, Amy excused herself to use the restroom. The moment she left the table, I saw my mother and sister exchange a look, and I felt my stomach drop. I knew that look. It was the look they shared when they were about to say something mean about someone. My mother leaned forward slightly and said in a voice she probably thought was quiet but wasn't, "Well, you didn't mention she was quite so heavy." Lauren immediately chimed in with, "I know, right?" I was shocked when they walked in. "She's very large." I felt my face flush with anger and embarrassment. Before I could say anything, my mother continued, "And she's rather irritating, isn't she? All those stories about her students going on and on. Does she ever stop talking?" Lauren laughed and agreed, saying that Amy seemed like one of those people who doesn't pick up on social cues, who doesn't realize when people aren't interested in what she's saying. My father looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Tyler glanced up from his phone, smirked, and went back to scrolling. I was about to speak up, to defend Amy and shut down this cruel conversation, when my mother said something that made my blood run cold. She reached over and patted my hand in this condescending way and said, "Sweetheart, you know we only want the best for you. You're handsome, successful, you could do so much better than her. She's not exactly the type of woman we imagined you ending up with. Maybe it's time to think about whether this relationship is really right for you." Lauren jumped in enthusiastically, adding, "Mom's right. Jake, you could be with someone gorgeous. Someone who fits with our family better. This girl, Amy, she's just not your type. She's too much, too big, too talkative, to everything. You deserve someone on your level." She said this like she was giving me sage advice, like she was looking out for my best interests rather than being incredibly cruel about a woman she had just met. I was frozen in shock and rage. These were people I loved, my own family, and they were sitting here tearing apart the woman I was planning to spend my life with, judging her based on her appearance and on some perception that she talked too much when she was simply trying to connect with them. I was about to unleash on all of them when I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned and saw Amy standing just outside the dining room entrance, clearly having heard everything. The look on her face is something I will never forget as long as I live. She looked devastated, humiliated, betrayed. Her eyes were already filling with tears. Our eyes met for just a second, and I saw the exact moment her heart broke. She turned and walked quickly toward the restaurant exit. I immediately stood up, knocking my chair back, and said to my family, "What the hell is wrong with all of you?" I didn't wait for an answer. I ran after Amy, calling her name, but she was already out the door. I caught up with her in the parking lot where she was fumbling with her car keys, tears streaming down her face. I tried to talk to her, to apologize, to explain, but she was sobbing too hard to really listen. Amy finally managed to say through her tears, "Did you know they felt that way? Did you agree with them?" I was horrified. I told her absolutely not, that I loved her exactly as she was, that my family was wrong and cruel, that I was going to go back in there and make them apologize. But Amy just shook her head and said, "I brought them gifts. Jake, I spent time and money and effort trying to make a good impression, and they were just waiting for me to leave the room so they could tear me apart. Your mother said you could do better than me. Your sister called me too big and too much. How am I supposed to come back from hearing that?" I begged her to wait, to let me fix this, but she got in her car and drove away, still crying. I stood in that parking lot feeling like my world was falling apart. I was furious with my family and heartbroken that Amy had been hurt so badly. I went back into the restaurant, back to that private dining room where my family was still sitting there like nothing had happened. They looked up when I came in, and my mother had the audacity to ask where Amy went. I lost it. I told them exactly what I thought of their behavior. I said they were cruel, shallow, judgmental people who had humiliated a kind, wonderful woman who had done nothing but tried to be nice to them. I told them I had heard every word they said, and worse, that Amy had heard it too. I said their comments about her weight and personality were disgusting and that they should be ashamed of themselves. My mother tried to interrupt, to say they were just being honest and looking out for me, but I shut that down immediately. I told her that unsolicited cruelty isn't honesty, it's just cruelty, and that there was no excuse for the way they had talked about Amy. Lauren got defensive, saying I was overreacting, that Amy was too sensitive if she couldn't handle a little honest feedback. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told Lauren that they weren't giving feedback to Amy, they were mocking her behind her back the second she left the room, and that there was nothing honest or helpful about calling someone fat and irritating. I said if Amy was too sensitive, then they were too cruel, and I knew which problem was worse. My father finally spoke up, saying maybe everyone should calm down and that this had gotten out of hand. I told him that his silence while Mom and Lauren trashed my girlfriend was just as bad as if he had joined in. I left the restaurant without saying goodbye, leaving them with the bill for the dinner. I tried calling and texting Amy repeatedly that night, but she didn't respond. I drove to her apartment, but she wouldn't answer the door. I left her a long voicemail apologizing, telling her that I loved her, that my family's opinions didn't matter to me, that I wanted to make this right. But she didn't call back that night or the next day. I was devastated, knowing that the relationship I valued most in my life was potentially destroyed because of my family's cruelty. The next day, I received a text from my mother saying that she thought I had overreacted at dinner and that while maybe they could have been more tactful, they were only trying to help me see that Amy wasn't a good match for our family. She suggested that I owed her an apology for ruining her birthday dinner and causing a scene. I was absolutely stunned by her lack of self-awareness and accountability. I wrote back a lengthy message explaining that she owed Amy an apology, that her comments were hurtful and inappropriate, and that until she and Lauren apologized sincerely to Amy, I would not be attending any family events or speaking to them. Lauren sent me her own message. Even more infuriating than my mother's, she said she refused to apologize for speaking the truth, that Amy was clearly not right for me, and that if Amy couldn't handle honest observations about her appearance and personality, she was too weak to be part of our family anyway. She said I was choosing some girl I had been dating for 2 years over my own sister and mother, and that I was being ridiculous. She actually said that she had done me a favor by helping me see that Amy wasn't good enough and that I should be thanking her, not demanding apologies. I was so angry I could barely see straight. I responded to Lauren telling her that her honesty was actually just cruelty, that commenting on someone's body size was never appropriate, and that Amy was more of a good person in her little finger than Lauren was in her entire body. I told her that she was shallow, mean-spirited, and that I was embarrassed to be related to her. I said that she hadn't done me any favors. She had potentially destroyed the best relationship I had ever had, and that if she couldn't see how wrong her behavior was, then we had nothing more to say to each other for 3 days. Amy didn't respond to any of my attempts to contact her. I was going crazy with worrying and guilt. Finally, on the 4th day, she agreed to meet me for coffee. She looked tired, like she hadn't been sleeping well, and my heart broke all over again knowing I was part of the reason she was hurting. We sat down and she let me talk first. I apologized profusely for my family, told her that their behavior was inexcusable, that I had confronted them and demanded they apologize to her. I told her that I loved her more than anything, that their opinions meant nothing to me compared to what we had together, and that I would do anything to make this right. Amy was quiet for a long time after I finished talking. Then she said something that I wasn't expecting. She told me that the cruel things my family said about her weight and personality hurt, but what hurt more was the realization that I had been hesitant to introduce her to them for 2 years. She said she had wondered sometimes why it took so long, why I always had excuses, and now she understood. She said I must have known on some level that they would judge her, that they would see her as not good enough, and I had been protecting her or maybe protecting myself from that reality. And while she appreciated that I had defended her and confronted them, the damage was already done. She had heard my mother say I could do better, heard my sister call her too big and too much, and those words were now in her head whenever she thought about me. I tried to argue, to say that I hadn't been hiding her because I was ashamed, that I just wanted to wait for the right time, but even as I said it, I knew she was partially right. I had been worried about how they would react to her, and I had delayed the introduction because of that worrying. That didn't mean I agreed with their judgments or that I was ashamed of Amy, but it did mean that I had let their potential reactions influence my decisions, and that had been a betrayal of Amy in its own way. Amy said she needed time to think about whether she could continue our relationship. She said that she couldn't be with someone whose family hated her, not unless I was willing to significantly distance myself from them and make it clear that their behavior was unacceptable. She said she needed to know that I would choose her over them, not just in words but in actions, and that she wasn't sure yet if she could trust that. She also said that unless my mother and sister sincerely apologized to her, she would never be in the same room with them again. And she needed to know if I was okay with that potentially permanent rift. I told her without hesitation that I was okay with it, that I had already told my mother and sister I wouldn't see them until they apologized, and that if they never apologized, then I would build my life without them. I said that she was my priority, that I wanted to marry her someday, and that my family's approval was not required for that. I told her I would prove through my actions that I was serious about choosing her and about not tolerating the way they had treated her. Amy said she appreciated that, but she still needed time. We left the coffee shop without any real resolution, and I felt like I was in limbo, waiting to see if my family's cruelty had permanently destroyed the relationship I valued most. Over the next few weeks, I had minimal contact with my family. My mother called a few times trying to smooth things over, but she never actually apologized or acknowledged that what she said was wrong. She kept framing it as a misunderstanding, saying that Amy had overreacted and that I was being desensitive on her behalf. My father reached out to say he hoped we could all move past this, but again, no real apology or accountability. Tyler stayed out of it entirely. And Lauren, true to form, doubled down on her position that she had done nothing wrong and that I was the one being unreasonable. Amy and I continued to see each other during this time, slowly rebuilding trust and connection. I made it clear through my actions that I was serious about prioritizing her. I missed family events, ignored my mother's guilt trips about missing Sunday dinners, and made it clear that until there were sincere apologies, I was maintaining my distance. Amy saw that I was following through on my promises, and gradually our relationship started to heal. We went to couples therapy to work through the trauma of what had happened and to make sure we were communicating effectively about our needs and boundaries. About 2 months after the disastrous dinner, something shifted. My father called and asked to meet with me alone. We met for lunch, and he told me that he had been thinking a lot about what happened, about the things my mother and Lauren said, and about my reaction. He said he felt guilty for not speaking up in the moment, for letting them say those cruel things without pushback. He said he had actually really liked Amy during the brief time he talked to her before she went to the restroom, that she seemed kind and genuine, and that he was ashamed of how his family had treated her. He asked if there was any way he could apologize to Amy directly. I was surprised but pleased by this development. I talked to Amy about it, and she agreed to meet with my father. They had coffee together, and my father gave what Amy later told me was a sincere and heartfelt apology. He acknowledged that his silence had been complicity, that he should have shut down the cruel comments immediately, and that he was sorry for the pain my family had caused her. He told her that he hoped she wouldn't judge him entirely on that one terrible night, and that he would like the opportunity to get to know her properly if she was willing. Amy accepted his apology, and while things were still somewhat awkward, it was a start. My mother and Lauren, however, remained stubborn. My mother continued to insist that she had done nothing wrong, that she was simply being a concerned parent, and that I was ruining our family relationship over nothing. Lauren was even worse, telling relatives her version of events, where Amy was an oversensitive woman who couldn't handle feedback and I was whipped and controlled by my girlfriend. Some relatives believed her version, which caused additional strain and drama, but I stood firm in my position. I told anyone who asked that my family had been cruel to my girlfriend, that they refused to apologize, and that I had chosen to distance myself until they took accountability for their behavior. The relationship between Amy and me did survive, though it took work and time. We've been together now for another year since the incident, so 3 years total, and we're in a much stronger place. Amy has developed a good relationship with my father, who has made consistent efforts to show respect and kindness. My brother Tyler eventually reached out and apologized too, saying he had been a coward for not speaking up and that he was sorry for his role in the situation. But my mother and Lauren remain unrepentant, and I have maintained my distance from them. Last month, I proposed to Amy, and she said yes. We're planning a wedding for next year, and we've already decided that my mother and sister will not be invited unless they sincerely apologize to Amy before then, which seems unlikely. Some people think I'm being too harsh, that I should forgive and move on for the sake of family unity. But Amy and I have talked extensively about this, and we both agree that having my mother and Lauren at our wedding, people who have shown such contempt for Amy and refused to acknowledge any wrongdoing, would taint what should be the happiest day of our lives. My father has accepted our decision and said he will attend the wedding regardless of whether my mother comes, which was a difficult choice for him but one I appreciate. He's told my mother that her stubbornness is causing her to miss out on important family moments, but she remains convinced that she's in the right and that eventually I'll come to my senses and apologize to her. Tyler will be attending and has asked to be in the wedding party, which meant a lot to both Amy and me. Looking back on that awful dinner 2 years ago, I can see it as a turning point in my life. It was the moment I had to choose between comfortable family dynamics and standing up for what was right, between going along to get along and protecting the woman I loved. I chose Amy, and I would make that same choice every time. The loss of my relationship with my mother and sister is sad, and I grieve what could have been if they were different people. But I don't regret my decision, because protecting Amy and building a life with someone who shares my values is more important than maintaining relationships with people who can be so cruel. For anyone listening to this who has experienced something similar, where your family or friends have been cruel to your partner and refused to take accountability, I want you to know that it's okay to choose your partner over toxic family members. Blood relation doesn't give anyone the right to be cruel without consequences. You're allowed to set boundaries, to distance yourself from people who hurt the ones you love, to build the family you choose rather than the one you were born into. It's not easy, and it comes with grief and guilt and difficult choices, but ultimately, protecting your partner and your relationship is worth it. I also want to say something to anyone who has been on the receiving end of cruel comments about their appearance or personality. Amy's confidence and self-worth were shaken by what my family said, even though she's generally a confident person. Those kinds of comments cut deep, especially when they come from people who are supposed to be welcoming you into their family. If you've experienced this, please know that those comments say everything about the people making them and nothing about your actual worth or value. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. And anyone who can't do that doesn't deserve access to you. My name is Jake. I'm 31 years old. And this is the story of how my family revealed their true colors at a birthday dinner and how I chose my girlfriend over their cruelty. Amy and I are building a life together, planning a wedding, and creating our own family culture based on kindness, respect, and genuine love. My mother and sister may never apologize or acknowledge what they did, but that's their loss. We're moving forward without them, and we're happier for it. Thank you for listening to my story.